Elbaf may very well end up as the best arc in One Piece. At the very least, it's going to surpass Egghead, and let me tell you that just like how we couldn't possibly predict all the crazy developments that happened during Egghead, you bet Elbaf is going to have its own twists and turns. Now guys, stick with me till the end because we're going to be talking about exactly what to expect from Elbaf and why we're in for an absolutely goated arc, even in comparison to other major arcs in One Piece. So to start things off, let me add that Oda's favorite television show growing up was called Vicky the Viking. This is before he was in 5th grade, and it is this show that began his lifelong fascination with pirates. Naturally, it was also this show that introduced Oda to the concept of Vikings, and without getting too deep into the details, what I'm trying to say is that Oda has been itching to draw Elbaf all this time. Elbaf was also most likely part of his original 5-year-long plan when he started One Piece back in 1997. All of this becomes even more obvious when you realize just how giants of Elbaf and Elbaf itself were introduced in the story. Little Garden is literally their first island in the Grand Line after the little stopover at Whiskey Peak. If it wasn't obvious already, Oda loves Vikings. He has based Elbaf and the giants on Vikings, and considering how it was the Vikings that got him into the pirates in the first place, we can reasonably expect that Oda is truly cooking something insane for this arc. There is a reason why Oda gave Elbaf the honor of being the origin of Nika's fable itself. By the way, did you notice that the groups like the Lunarians and the Fishmen hail Joy Boy while the Giants and the Buccaneers worship Nika? Oda has obviously been very methodological with all of this, and more things will make sense in hindsight. You know, places like Fishman Island, Wano, and Egghead as well have all given us a Joy Boy lore. Who's who? Luffy's fruit itself and Egghead has given us exposition on Nika, but ultimately the right pieces are set up to fall into place in Elbaf. And it goes without saying that this is going to be the most important arc for Luffy's character exploration ever since Sabaody and post Marineford. He'll learn about Nika, and Robin would connect the dots and explain the previous awakened users of the Nika fruit. Luffy will have to come to terms with the identity that he has found himself into, and he'll also have to truly learn how to use Gear 5, because as impressive as he's been so far, it also looks as though Luffy's been fumbling around. And all of that's fine, but he'll need to know exactly what's going on with Gear 5 so that he can use it more effectively. The same goes for the other Straw Hats. Robin has her reunion with Saul, and Elbaf likely has some interesting poneglyphs for her to read, not to mention the giants live for over 300 years. It's possible that somebody's grandpa was actually alive during the Void Century. Nami may get another power-up, for example like Mother Caramel's homie Pandora. Frankie may further develop himself because Lilith is tagging along, and although we can't predict what's in store for the other Straw Hats, what we can predict is that Zoro will finally get to the level where he can fight Mihawk. And of course, there's Usopp. I mean, imagine if Big Mom somehow returns and Usopp defeats her in some weird twisted way and becomes the hero of the Giants because we all know how much they hated her. Nah, that'd be too contrived, but I do think that Usopp is going to get some crazy respect later in the story for defeating an Emperor Buggy to be more precise. But anyways, what can we expect from Usopp in this arc? In the context of everyone's dream, Elbaf is to Usopp what All Blue is to Sanji and Laboom is to Brook. It's everything, and we know for a fact that this is where Usopp becomes a brave warrior of the seas. Now the way I see it, Usopp will have some legendary moment of bravery where a few seconds of his courage stops something truly tragic from happening and forever changes the fate of the world. Something similar to what Kobe did at Marineford. And I also think it's a possibility that Usopp's slingshot will eat a devil fruit. It doesn't have to be an absurd mythical Zoan or anything like that. Just a devil fruit that thematically fits him and also complements his sniping. Of course, there's an SBS where Oda answers the devil fruits that non-devil fruit Straw Hats would eat, and he says that Usopp would eat the Poki Poki no Mi. Basically, this is the pocket fruit, and it allows the user to store random things in their body or all over their body. But because Usopp can already pull out the right seeds for the right situation no problem, it'd be interesting to see if there's another fruit that can also complement his abilities. Or who knows, maybe Usopp will hold Mjolnir. There's also the inevitable meeting between Usopp and his father, just like how it's also finally time for Luffy to meet Shanks. Now I know what what you're thinking, didn't Shanks and the red-haired pirates already leave Elbaf? Yeah, that's true, but think about it this way. Elbaf is basically Shanks' territory. Shanks' ship was built by the Vikings. And more importantly, Luffy is now at the same level as him, so it was always only a matter of time before they met anyways. Plus, since Elbaf is also Usopp's arc, it'd feel wrong if this isn't where Usopp finally met Yasa. So yes, in addition to the Nika lore, Robin's reunion with Saul, and more concrete information on both Joy Boy and the Void Century, Luffy is going to learn how to use Gear 5 more effectively, the Straw Hats are going to get power-ups, and Usopp is going to get a much awaited conclusion to his character arc that make all the wait worth it. However, let me be clear that this is just the start. Elbaf is stated to be the strongest nation in One Piece. It is allied with Shanks, which means that we can safely assume that Elbaf won't need to be freed like Wano or Fishman Island or Skypiea. Really, most of the other countries that the Straw Hats already visited. But the most important thing here is that when Oda showed Elbaf, he also mentions that Elbaf is located in a region that is called Warland. Elbaf is constantly at war. This means that forget about all those theories which say that Elbaf would be similar to like Zou or something, and we're most definitely probably going to get a confrontation with either Akainu or Blackbeard. Shanks himself is inspired by Tyr, the Norse god of war and justice who lost an arm to a beast, so he may also fight Luffy to see how far he has come. But if I'm being honest, anything can happen in Elbaf and it would make sense. Akainu could show up with a terrifying fleet to stop Luffy before he finds the last road poneglyph and sets to Laugh Tale. Blackbeard could pull up for literally any reason, though personally I think he'd go after Poseidon or Pluton after learning about them from Caribou. Now, given the connections to Norse mythology, we can expect that there will be serious conflicts in Elbaf that will ultimately lead to a Ragnarok, an event which changes the world. Loki himself is also all but confirmed to be a wild card. He had no qualms about marrying Lola, even though he knew that there's no one more hated by the giants than Big Mom. Plus, according to the mythology, Loki is supposed to be the trickster god, so you can definitely expect him to rile things up in unexpected and unusual ways. And speaking of what we can expect from the nation of Elbaf itself, let me remind you that during Wano, Oda mentioned that this scene from chapter 909 where we see Wano for the first time is one of his top 3 panels. Now, considering Oda's love for the giants and how much he has waited to finally draw Elbaf, you bet we're going to get something truly special. Plus, as we saw during the episodes leading up to Kid vs. Shanks, Elbaf is a beautiful sanctuary untainted by the relentless greed of both the world government and the pirate empires alike. That is not to say that Elbaf hasn't seen its fair share of destruction. We know that in chapter 431, when Frankie talked about the treasure tree Atom, he said that a long time ago, an endless war raged on the island that led to its destruction, but people returned and rebuilt their nation near a giant tree. That tree, of course, is Treasure Tree Atom. It's wood from this Atom tree that made Roger's Oro Jackson and Luffy's Thousand Sunny. Of course, we don't have any special confirmation, but it's more likely than not that the Atom tree is in Elbaf, especially because we already know that there's a large tree in Elbaf, and we also know that it could be a reference to the mythological world tree from Norse mythology called Yggdrasil. It's also worth mentioning that the second entrance to Sky Islands exists somewhere, and if the Atom tree is based on Yggdrasil, then let me tell you that Yggdrasil's branches extend far into the heavens. Uroj likely used this entrance to go to the Sky Islands with his crew and chill. And yes, Uroj is the only member of the worst generation who hasn't been relevant yet, but I'm sure all of us agree that he'll be in Elbaf. Now, Uranus, the third ancient weapon, is the god of the sky. If Elbaf connects with the Sky Islands and Elbaf is an important enough country to have some relation to an ancient weapon, then we can say that Uranus is in Elbaf. But wait, if Uranus is in Elbaf, then what the hell did Emu and the 5 elders use? Well guys, they used Pluton. But no, not the real Pluton. Remember, it's Pluton that is said to destroy an entire island in a single strike. If you go back to Eni's lobby, you'll see that there's a storyline about how the blueprints are needed because only another Pluton will be able to stop a Pluton. This is why there is a theory that Emu has a second Pluton, but this one is incomplete, so it needs the Mother Flame to run, or maybe there's a fourth ancient weapon. In fact, maybe this fourth ancient weapon is the national treasure of Marijoa. The fourth ancient weapon theory is a bit more likely because it also explains why the world government was putting resources into getting the blueprints from Tom. Now that we know that Joy Boy wanted to preserve the ancient weapons for the future generations, it wouldn't make sense if Emu has already gotten his hands on one. Let me know down in the comments, what do you guys think though? The last rolled poneglyph is obviously not on Elbaf, so it'd feel pretty underwhelming if Elbaf also doesn't have an ancient weapon. Wano had both a rolled poneglyph and an ancient weapon. Fishman Island had an ancient weapon and also a rolled poneglyph, but now that poneglyph is in the hands of the man with the burn scar. So yes, it's very likely that Elbaf will have Uranus. I just had to say that, okay. So yes, it's very likely that Elbaf has Uranus, and I have this very strong feeling that Uranus is going to be like a giant beetle. Overall, in terms of characters, we can potentially see Kid's return. He did beat Big Mom after all, so I'd imagine that some of the giants would be kinder to him other than Dory and Broggy. We also have that kid from when Shanks was at Elbaf who wanted Shanks to take him with them to the seas. He'll also be relevant, and it'd be fun to see his dynamic with Luffy. By the way, fun fact, that kid was wearing the same hat as Vicky the Viking. And finally, Elbaf is likely going to be the last chance we'll see Enio return to the story. So to sum it all up, Elbaf will have several endgame plot points that'll culminate into an event called the Ragnarok. Ragnarok is an event from Norse mythology that marks the end of the world. It is when Jormungandr rises from the oceans and the massive waves from its rise cause the world to sink. We know the world is going to sink thanks to Vegapunk's broadcast. We also know that Jormungandr is canon. In chapter 129, Dory and Broggy said that only the great serpent soaked in blood can withstand their attack. You see, Jormungandr means the world serpent. And in the context of One Piece, the red line can be metaphorically thought of as the giant serpent soaked in red blood, or in other words, the world serpent Jormungandr. That's right guys, the endgame has already begun. Ragnarok will take place at the end of Elbaf and the world of One Piece will begin to sink, but we can't yet pinpoint the exact context in which the world will sink because it's unlikely that Emu himself will destroy the red line. But let me hear your thoughts. What do you guys think? Will Elbaf surpass Egghead? Do you have high expectations for this arc? The Egghead arc has already blown all of our minds and it's just the beginning of the end. With so much set up for Elbaf, I'd say it's all the more reason to get hyped. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. This definitely was a long one, probably the longest one on the channel, but let me know down in the comments, what do you guys want to see next as well? Smash the subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on the next One Piece video. Remember, with all of that being said, take it easy and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.